Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because today we are talking about one of the most shocking developments coming straight out of Eastern Europe. Generals in Belarus are turning against President Alexander Lukashenko, and a full-scale power struggle is now exploding right in the heart of Minsk. The capital that once looked unshakable under his iron rule is now trembling with chaos, fear, and betrayal. For decades, Lukashenko ruled with an iron fist, often called Europe's last dictator. He built his power on loyalty inside the military and intelligence services, but that loyalty is now crumbling as top generals openly defy his orders and question his alliance with Russia. This is not a rumor anymore. This is a breaking transformation that could decide the fate of Belarus and even influence the outcome of the war in Ukraine. What we are witnessing could be the biggest internal collapse of power in Belarus since its independence after the fall of the Soviet Union. Eyewitnesses in Minsk report that last night military convoys rolled into the streets around government buildings, armored vehicles blocked roads near the presidential palace, and communications began to fail. Many areas of the city lost internet access. And by midnight, the sound of helicopters echoed above the city. People feared that a coup might already be underway at around 1 a.m. Local time, Lukashenko appeared on state television, his face pale, his voice trembling. He accused foreign agents and traitors within the army of trying to destroy the country. He promised that order would be restored, but his speech only made the nation more nervous. Reports began pouring in from across the country that units of the Belarusian army were refusing to follow presidential orders, particularly those connected to deploying troops into Ukraine. Several senior generals are said to have refused to send their men across the border, claiming that Belarusian soldiers should not die for. Russia's War One leaked message, allegedly from a colonel in the 38th Air Assault Brigade, said the president has lost touch with reality and no longer represents the will of the people. That message spread like wildfire on encrypted channels as soldiers began to side with the dissenters. By dawn, tanks were seen stationed near the Ministry of Defense, and checkpoints were set up across Minsk. Some residents described it as the most tense moment since the 2020 protests that nearly brought down Lukashenko's regime that year. He managed to cling to power with Russian help, but this time it's different. This time, the threat is not from the streets, but from inside his own army. For years, Lukashenko has tried to balance his loyalty between Moscow and his independence. He allowed Russian forces to use Belarus as a launch pad for the invasion of Ukraine. But he never sent large numbers of his own troops. Many officers saw this as a betrayal of their sovereignty. They believed Belarus was becoming nothing more than a Russian satellite state. When reports surfaced that Lukashenko had agreed to allow full Russian control of certain military bases, including nuclear storage sites, the frustration inside the officer corps exploded. Sources close to the general staff claim that General Viktor Sokolov and General Andrei Matveychuk led a secret meeting of top commanders. 2 weeks ago, the meeting reportedly took place inside a secure facility near Baranovichi, under the guise of a coordination session with Russian officers, but instead it turned into a heated debate about the future of Belarus, according to leaked audio clips. One of the generals said, "We are soldiers of Belarus, not servants of Moscow. Our oath is to defend our homeland, not to fight Putin's wars." Those words would become the spark that ignited an internal fire soon after that meeting. Several units stopped responding to orders from the defense ministry, and reports of silent disobedience began to circulate. Lukashenko reacted quickly, ordering the arrest of several mid-level officers accused of conspiracy, but the arrests only deepened the divide between loyalists and rebels. By the time Russian advisors in Minsk realized how serious the split was, it was already too late. The cracks had become fault lines, and the Belarusian military was now divided into factions, some loyal to Lukashenko, others demanding his resignation. Russian officials issued public statements of full support for Lukashenko, calling the unrest a Western-backed coup attempt, but behind closed doors, analysts believe the Kremlin is panicking. Putin cannot afford instability in Belarus because it would expose Russia's own vulnerabilities. The two countries share deep military coordination, including joint air defense systems and intelligence sharing. If Belarus descends into civil conflict, it could open NATO's eastern flank wide open. At the same time, opposition leaders in exile are calling this moment historic. They are urging soldiers and civilians to stand together and end 3 decades of dictatorship. Exiled leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya posted a message on social media saying Belarus's freedom is near, courage will win over fear across Belarus. Small protests are appearing once again in cities like Brest, Grodno, and Vitebsk. Despite police warnings, crowds are waving the old red and white flag, a symbol of defiance that Lukashenko banned years ago. In Minsk, clashes have been reported between loyalist police and defecting soldiers. Gunfire was heard near the Independence Square, and smoke rose from a government building where rebels were allegedly holed up for hours. Lukashenko's security forces are desperately trying to regain control, while his inner circle appears to be shrinking. Intelligence sources claim that at least 2 members of his Security Council have fled the country, possibly seeking asylum in Turkey or Poland. One senior official reportedly told a foreign journalist off record that the regime has lost its foundation, and it's only a matter of time before it collapses. As night fell again on Minsk, the city remained tense. Roadblocks stood at every major intersection. The airport was shut down. Commercial flights suspended. Rumors swirled that Lukashenko had moved to an underground command center protected by Russian security units. According to unverified reports, a small group of Russian Spetsnaz operatives arrived in Minsk earlier today to secure key government facilities, suggesting that Moscow might be preparing to intervene directly. Meanwhile, the mood among civilians is one of both fear and hope. Fear of violence, but hope that change might finally come after so many years of oppression. People remember the brutality of 2020 when thousands were beaten and arrested. But this time, something feels different because the challenge is coming from within the system, not just the streets. Political analysts warn that if Lukashenko loses control of the army, his rule is effectively over. Dictators survive on loyalty. Once that breaks, the end comes fast. History offers many examples, from Ceausescu in Romania to Gaddafi in Libya, and now possibly Lukashenko in Belarus. The parallels are haunting. For decades he ruled through fear, silencing opposition, exiling rivals, and depending heavily on Russian money. But the Ukraine war has drained those resources and turned Belarus into an unwilling accomplice as Russian casualties grow and sanctions deepen. Belarusian officers see no future in this alliance with Moscow. They know that if Russia loses in Ukraine, Belarus could be left isolated, sanctioned, and economically ruined. The younger officers, especially those trained in Europe, quietly oppose the regime. They grew up watching the protests of 2020 and see democracy, not dictatorship, as their future. This generational divide inside the army is now visible, and it's tearing the institution apart. On one side, old Soviet-minded commanders who remain loyal to Lukashenko; on the other, young officers who see him as a relic of the past. International reactions are starting to pour in. NATO has called for calm, urging both sides to avoid violence. Poland has placed its border forces on high alert. Lithuania has increased surveillance along its frontier, while the European Union is preparing emergency talks in Brussels to assess the situation. U.S. intelligence reportedly detected increased Russian troop movements near the Belarusian border, raising fears that Moscow might launch a stabilization operation to save Lukashenko. But any Russian intervention could trigger massive unrest and possibly even armed resistance inside Belarus, because now people are no longer afraid. Even some police officers have joined the demonstrators, saying they will not shoot at their own citizens. The propaganda machine of state television is collapsing fast. Journalists are refusing to read government scripts, and some channels have gone dark. Social media is filled with live videos showing soldiers taking down Lukashenko's portraits from offices and waving the Belarusian flag as a sign of defiance. Meanwhile, Lukashenko has ordered a nationwide curfew and declared martial law. Anyone caught spreading so-called disinformation can face up to 15 years in prison. But enforcement is nearly impossible when half of the enforcers no longer obey him. The crisis is escalating hour by hour. Many analysts predict that within days, either Lukashenko will flee the country or Russia will send troops to restore him. Both scenarios are dangerous. One could lead to civil war, the other to foreign occupation. Whatever happens next, Belarus will never be the same again. The illusion of stability is gone forever. The people have seen that. Even the most powerful regime can crack when its protectors turn away. As dawn rises over Minsk once more, the streets remain eerily quiet, but the silence hides the storm within. Soldiers whisper about loyalty, Civilians stock food and medicine, and the president remains unseen. Rumors claim he's negotiating directly with Moscow for safe passage if things collapse completely. At this point, the future of Belarus hangs in the balance. Will it become another satellite of Russia? Or will this rebellion mark the birth of a new free nation? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: history is being written in Minsk right now, and the world is watching, so stay tuned for more updates as this extraordinary story continues to unfold. This is one of the biggest turning points in modern European politics. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe, because we will keep tracking every new development in the Belarus power struggle. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, and see you in the next report.